We're so happy that you are all joining us. So as you just heard, the meeting tonight is being recorded for anybody who wasn't able to to join us and wants to get to enjoy it later. We're super excited that you're spending your Wednesday night with us for a special edition of NSA Connects with us with Teachers Who Stutter. So, uh, 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 as I'm one of the hosts tonight, and so we're gonna start out just introducing ourselves and sharing a little bit of our experiences, and then we're kind of we have some questions to try and like get the group talking, and we want to hear about what your experiences are. So, my name's Sarah Onofri, and I am a person who stutters, and I'm also an elementary school ESL teacher. I work with grades with with grades 1 to 5, generally, and I live in Boston. I've been teaching for this is my 12th year at my school, and in terms of the NSA, so I've been involved with the NSA since 2006. I started coming to conferences when I was 16, and it definitely had a really big impact on me. And at my first conference, I as I met someone who was a teacher who also stuttered, and it was like the first time that I really believed that it was possible. So I just love getting to be part of this community, and I'm the family programs coordinator, and love doing stuff to help our kids and teens and their families. And I'm also a chapter leader in Boston for our adult chapter and for our family chapter. So, anyways, that's a little bit about little bit about me. Us, Ariana, you want to go?
Sure. I'm Ariana and I'm from Houston, Texas. I am a special education teacher in elementary, so grades 1 through 5. Um, I have I have been part of the NSA since 2018. I'm also the co-leader of the Houston chapter. It'll be 2 years in August. Um, I don't know. I've always had the love of teaching, so I'm glad to be here. So, welcome everybody.
Awesome. So we are super excited you're all here, and we're hoping that people will want to share, and we can share our different experiences. And Pam just put a great note in the chat that we're definitely hoping to get some conversation going in the chat. And of course, if you're comfortable coming off mute and sharing, we would love that too. So just to get started, we just kind of wanted to sort of like lay out the guidelines for our group tonight. Of course, it's a safe, supportive place, and you're welcome to share as little as you like. And feel free to write in the chat, stay on mute if you're not speaking, and whenever you want to share, you could raise your hand and then come off mute. We'd love to hear other people. So yeah, so that's just a little bit about how it's going to work. And so we're going to start out with some like introduction questions to kind of get the group going. As Ariana, do you want to start with some of those?
Yes. Um, so the first one is, what do you teach? What subject and grade are you guys teaching?
And if you're not a teacher right now and you're just interested, or you want to be a teacher, you could share that. So you could put that in the chat, or if anyone wants to come off mute and share, would love it.
Yes, I'll go. I didn't see the raise hand little thingy.
Oh, that's okay. Feel free to just like, jump in.
Okay. Hi, I'm Cora Campbell from Southern California. Um, I am a speech pathology assistant, and I work with middle schoolers age grades 6 through 8, mainly the special ed population. And it's so good to be here with other educators.
Nice. Thanks so much for 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 sharing, Cora.
My name is Robert. I'm a middle school uh, dean of students and also a varsity football coach. So I'm going on year of coaching, going on year 34 and going on year 28 of school administrators. So yep, I know both sides, and I'm just excited to hear what everybody says. I One thing I've always said is I think we all wanted to do this. We all wanted to teach or coach in my case, and it's really nice that we didn't let this thing hold us back. Okay.
Thanks so much for sharing that.
My name is Paul Shrout. Sorry, my name is Paul Shrout. I'm in year 22 of teaching. One more week to go until summer. I currently teach high school special education. I do ages of 14 to 21. I do transition and vocational skills.
Nice. And I'm very jealous of people in other parts of the country that have, a week left. We're uh, as we have 25 days, but as of who's counting?
Yes, exactly.
As of definitely not me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have 14 days. So
Ah, that sounds better than 25, but
My name is Avery Gilliam. I am the brother of Arianna and Gilliam, and I am also a teacher. I teach business here in Houston, Texas. I teach grades 9 through 12, and Rob, like you, I am also a varsity football coach. So nice to meet you all.
thanks so much for for joining us.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bill Dunbar. I am not a teacher, but I am a educator as I own a video production company. I'm a producer, director, probably produce people from, the Jacksons or whatever and certain things. And, in my profession, we talk a lot. We talk on TV, we talk publicly. So interested in how everybody else is doing.
Nice. Thank you for sharing. Awesome. And I love to see all the people who have shared in the chat. So thanks for whether you wanted to share out loud or share in the chat. We love getting to, meet you guys and hear a little bit about your stories. And so does anybody want to share what sort of drew them to teaching, and maybe like the thing you love most about it? I see we do also have some non-teacher but educators. I was almost thinking, I guess, as educators who stutter, definitely, everyone in that umbrella is definitely welcome. And so SLPs, as SLPAs, we love to have you guys here on the team.
I was gonna say that my stuttering brought me to the field of speech pathology, and the journey of stuttering is up and down like a roller coaster, but I just love working with the kids, especially the special needs kids, and occasionally we get students who stutter, and it's really good to work with them as well. And it's good to not feel so judged working with that population. And I feel like we're always educating other people as well.
I think,
Yeah, have you?
I
Sorry,
think
go ahead, Rob.
for me, I'm sorry. For me is because I always knew that I wanted to work with kids, and I always knew that I wanted to coach, and I didn't really care that stuttered. One thing that works for me, you know, and Avery, you could probably relate with this, is one thing that works with me is volume. When I want to make an adjustment or I want to talk loud, I get going, and I'm very, very, very fluent. So I mean, I think that's one thing, I guess I've always felt. I mean, when I first started the career, it was like, I mean, yeah, the kids knew. You didn't think they knew, but they knew. But you could also see some of the kids like, hey, you know, uh, knock it off. I mean, coach, teacher, he's a cool guy, you know, whatever. They kind of saw past that because you cared about him, and you know, okay. And I think they kind of thought it was all right. Well, you know, he's got an issue too, but yeah, but I never let it. I just never let it like hold me back from what I wanted to actually do with my life. You know, it's kind of it. But again, you know, I've always said the biggest thing for me, volume, and really works. It just opens up your vocal cords. So, but yeah, that's it for me.
Hi, I'm Lisa, and I am a fourth grade teacher here in the town of Grafton, Massachusetts. I learned a breathing technique when I was in high school. My parents sent me to Boston to learn a certain breathing technique to help me get through some of my stuttering. And I did not start to stutter until I was 13. And my dad is a moderate stutterer. So I've learned different breathing techniques that have helped me in the situations when dealing with um, parents, admin, and whatnot. But it's so good to be here. I feel at home in a way because I feel that you understand. Um, we understand each other. We understand what it's like, that anxiety speaking in front of people and in crowds. But I love what I do. I love being with the kids because everyone's not perfect and we come with so many different issues, especially the kids. And I think it makes us even more empathetic and compassionate to those children. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here. It sort of brings us to sort of our like next questions, wanting to really like dive into our experiences with stuttering in the classroom. And so just to I started to think about, we were wondering how people deal with their stuttering at school. Do you talk about it with your kids? Do you like, and if you do you bring it up or do you wait for them to bring it up? Have you not brought it up before? And how do they respond?
I'll go ahead and answer this one. So I teach grades 9 through 12, so freshmen all the way up to seniors. Uh, and this is my third year of teaching, by the way. So I've had the privilege of teaching various different kids, right? And I've taught multiple students who have had stutters, right? So fortunately for me, my sister Arianna, you know, I've had the privilege of watching her grow since a little baby, right? So I say all this to say that none of this is new to me, right? It's something that I embrace. It's something that I've adjusted to. It's something that I actually, you know, I want my students to be themselves in my classroom, no matter you know, who you are or what type of adversity you're dealing with, right? So I had an instance my very first year teaching. This is the very first semester as a high school student or a high school teacher. One of my students was presenting, and he was stuttering, and I had some kids kind of poke fun at him as he was doing his presentation, and I quickly jumped in, corrected the situation. Right, I had to let it be known that for one, I don't condone any types of bullying, and two, uh, I think it's nice, right? I think it's warranted to create a safe environment for everyone to feel like themselves, them natural selves, right? Their natural selves, who you are naturally, is how I want you to be when you walk into my classroom, and then you know when you leave. So, uh, you know, I've had to kind of regulate the behavior you know, from multiple students. And here in Texas, you know, it's not unusual to have 30 plus kids in one class, right? So you know, my biggest thing is making sure that all the kids, all of my students know that we are all different somehow, right? We're not all equally the same, and we all have different characteristics, right? Different passions, different quirks, etc., right? And to just love each other, you know, as you would want to be loved too. So
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I feel like with my students, a lot of times I think I I feel like it's good for them to see that, you know, adults have stuff that they struggle with too. And obviously, stuttering is not the same as, you know, dealing with learning a new language. But I feel like with my students being English language learners, I feel like there are definitely like some like parallels. And it's funny, like I remember like when I was in elementary school and like going to speech, I remember I hated having to like be pulled out of class. So then I think it's like kind of ironic that like here I am is in this job where I'm pulling kids out of class. But like generally they're very happy to come because I'm just so much fun. Um, but I feel like, I don't know, it's just so important to be able to like, you know, share that and that, you know, we're all different and we need to listen to each other and respect each other. I generally like I don't I don't like advertise with my students like from the get-go, like tell them like, hi, I stutter, but it always ends up coming up. And so I'll, you know, because I'll get really stuck or a kid will be like, you know, oh, Miss O, why do you talk like that? And so I'll just usually be like, oh, you know, I stutter, I get stuck on my words and I need you to be patient, whatever. And I feel like generally like they get it. Sometimes they need reminders and like one of my favorite memories was like my first teaching job and um I was doing a lot of different things. I was wearing a lot of hats, but every week I taught this like literacy class to a class of second graders. And so like some of them knew me from I was subbing the year before and some of them didn't know me too well. But there was one point when I was like I was reading aloud and I got like super stuck and one of the kids was laughing and this other boy who had known me from when I was subbing last year was like, that's not funny. We don't laugh at that. And it was just really like, you know, I mean, it was just like so nice that, you know, like the kids had, you know, picked up on the fact that like we're just all different and we need to be respectful of each other's voices. So that was kind of special.
Yeah, that's the same for me as well. Just not just in my class in general, just kids throughout the school that I interact with. I have several kids that come into my classroom just to say hi and talk. And recently I put up a billboard for National Stuttering Awareness Week, and I was in the hallway putting it up, and I had a few students come and ask, "Oh, what are you doing? And what's this?" so I had the chance to explain that, like, what stuttering is and how different people speak. And I put up pictures of different famous people who stutter, and just to get them, like, get, I don't know kind of how to say it, but just to get the pictures of, oh, one day I could be a TV host, or I could be an athlete, or I could be this and that, and I could be a person who stutters as well. And I love when my kids come ask me, "Oh, I hear that you stutter. I kind of stutter too," and I'm like, I know, like, like I love that how they acknowledge that the like they're different, but in a good way. And to see that I'm in a teaching position, and they can be a teacher, but one day, as a person who stutters, it, it has that good reward f- feeling, and I love that.
Anybody else want to share your experiences with sharing about stuttering with your students, or maybe you don't share about it, and that's okay too, and that's something to share.
And if you do share, do you, like, at the beginning of the school year, do you disclose, like, you stutter to your students?
Yeah, look, I disclose to my students. My students are all university students, so it's a little bit different. I wonder how I'd go with younger people. And the first time I step into a class, each semester, I explain to everyone that I do have a slight stutter, and that it results in little pauses that might seem like I've forgotten what I want to say, but I usually haven't forgotten, and just to be patient with me. And I find that, and I've noticed this going back, I started public speaking in 2009, and I noticed that whenever I would be in a situation where I had to stand up and speak, that if I disclosed that I had a stutter, my speech would be so much more smooth, I guess, or so much more fluent. I know fluent is a trigger word for a lot of people. Apologies for that. But it would be, I would feel much more comfortable in speaking in those situations once I had disclosed.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to that. I feel like a lot of times, like when I get it out there, like just in conversations in general, not necessarily at school, but I feel like when people know that I stutter and I've like shared it, I just feel like my comfort level is just like so much better. And then it does feel like it's easier to speak without, like, it doesn't feel as like tense.
I wanted to say that this at the beginning of this school year, I made a video for the teachers and the staff about my stuttering, because I was tired of being like embarrassed about it, and it was really cool. Like, we have this thing called daybreak announcements for the kids and stuff, and the kids who work on that chose to put my video in the daybreak announcements, and so, like, the whole school knew that I stuttered, and I just felt so included, because in the past years I felt like an outsider. And just today we had like a staff um like day after school, and social situations are still really difficult for me, especially like in a more relaxed setting and not so structured. And I was proud of myself because I showed up, and I even told my principal, "Hey, at least I stopped by," and he was like laughing and stuff. But I guess it's just a small stuff, and the staff who don't care about my stuttering and don't want to care about it, well, you know what? That's okay. It's not on me. It's on them, and I can't to do anything about it. But that advocating for myself like that has been a game changer.
That's incredible. I feel like just like being able to like share it out there, and kind of also like when like Arianna mentions her like bulletin board, like I feel like that's like really incredible to just like, work on sharing and like being able to really put yourself out there. That is really awesome.
I've never really advertised with my students because most of them have pretty significant needs, so they're probably not noticing what's going on when I'm talking. I do the advertisement when I do my IEP meetings. So before I begin, I let the parents know, hey, I am a PWS. I'm a person who stutters, and it might take me a while. But the good thing about IEP meetings, it's all most of the IEP is mostly done. So I'm reading a good part of that, and I'm pretty fluent when I read. So knock on wood, so far it's been pretty good, but I advertise more to the parents than I do with my students.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if I can kind of go with the, Paul, I commend you for that because I'm horrible when I'm reading, but I just, I mean, how many of us have issues where the parents come at us? So I'm in a role where I discipline for, you know, vaping, swearing at teachers, the blah 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 blah, and I always get these parents that when I call them, they're like, "What? You can't even talk right when you call me," and I get that stuff too, and I mean, do you guys get that as well? I don't know, I don't, and I've actually had to stop them and say something like, "Well, I'm sorry, but I have a speech issue," and then they like, "Oh, okay," but and I get, well, how come every time you call me, you talk, like you're all nervous, or what are you afraid of me, and they come at you. But yeah, so I just wonder if anybody else has that issue with the parents, because I don't do parent teacher conferences, obviously, because I'm administration, but I do, everyday conversations with parents. So I'm just wondering how many of you guys have had interactions with the parents.
I just want to say, not with the parents, but like some of the students over the past few years have been rude as well, and I've had a lot of like t tears, but I think it makes us to stronger and more prepared when that happens again.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, hi, everybody. For me, I teach kindergarten through 12th graders that have learning disabilities, learning differences. And speaking to students, I find stuttering is even an asset because they see us imperfections as being okay. And so that's really helped. For me, it's authority figure. So if I'm talking to a parent or at a team meeting, that's when I may stutter more because of that. And it's just says to me, it's in my head. If I was talking to a student, I'd have no problem. But in my head, I'm feeling concerned about how I'm coming across. So I stutter more.
Pam, did you have a comment?
Yeah, not about the parents, but I did want to share a situation that I've had in the past. I'm not a teacher, but a recent job that I had, I worked in a vocational high school. So part of my job was to go around and make presentations to all the public high schools in my district, to encourage 9th and 10th graders to consider taking a half a day of vocational training, so that they could get like their CNA license or their HVAC credentials or their IT certificate, and graduate with that credential along with their high school diploma. So I would sometimes, so there was like 12 school districts in my territory. So there were some days where I would have to make 5 presentations a day at a school, and sometimes back to back. So you asked the question about like, did you ever disclose to the students? And I always ask myself, should I? And I didn't, because I didn't want to make the presentation about stuttering awareness. The presentation was about, are you interested in becoming an auto mechanic or an HVAC technician, or, a chef or whatever? I didn't want it to make it about stuttering, but I stuttered. So I remember one time I was like, it was like my 4th presentation of the day. And I don't know about any of you folks, but my stuttering gets more pronounced as I tire through the day. So like by like the 4th presentation, I was getting tired. I'd been standing, so my quote unquote fluency was breaking down even more than usual. So I'm doing my thing, and I saw this kid out of the corner of my eye, and he was like pointing and laughing. So I attempted to just like ignore it, but then he was like getting another kid to join in, and they were both like giggling and pointing. So I said to myself, are you going to do something about this? Because it looks like the other kids are like waiting for you to like react. So I decided that I had to do something, because it was so inappropriate. So I did. I stopped and I said, hey, you guys, I just want you to know that I stutter, and I'm okay with it most of the time, and I hope that you are too, but I'm not okay with that. And I said, it's not fair. I can't help it. I'm not trying to call anybody out, but it's something that I do. It's not who I am. And I don't think it's fair for you to be laughing and pointing fingers at me. If you have questions, you can certainly ask me questions about it. And like the whole room like stopped, and the kids, like, if they could have applauded, they would have, but they were like, I could tell like the rest of the class was like proud that I didn't let those 2 kids get away with it. And those 2 kids, I think they also respected the fact that I said something, and my heart was pounding, and like I felt like the usual reaction I get, you know, when something like that happens. I like felt my eyes like well up a little bit, but I'm like, there's nothing to be ashamed of here. There's no reason to cry, you know, like I didn't put them in their place, but I said something. And hopefully that was a lesson that they learned that day. And I think the rest of the class also learned that, you know, people have differences and it's okay to stand up for yourself and say something. And I did walk away feeling really proud of myself for doing that. So that's what I wanted to share.
That's really awesome, Pam. I'm glad you shared that. And I feel like how great that you decided to do something, because I'm sure, like, I mean, you said you walked away feeling good about it. And I'm sure if you hadn't and it had just continued, you wouldn't have walked away feeling so good about it.
No, I would have went out to my car when I was done and probably
Yeah.
cried, you know, and I was past that at that point. I was just like, you know what, like, you two need to cut the shit. That's what I really wanted to say, but I couldn't say it in a class, you know. And what was so terrible was that when I would do these presentations, the teachers would leave the classroom and go take a break or whatever. So like here I am with this class of 20 kids or whatever that I know nothing about, and they would go be taking a break in the coffee room. And like I just felt that was so unfair to just leave me alone with kids that I had no knowledge of, no control over, you know. So like they all could have had major behavior problems for all I knew, you know, but you know, I handled it the best that I could, and I felt good about it. So thank you for listening.
Yeah, thank you for sharing. Pam, Pam, you reminded me of something that happened earlier this year with me. Um, I, I don't know. I don't want to say not as dramatic because I just feel like high school kids sound like so much more terrible. But fifth graders, I guess, can be a little bit obnoxious themselves. And so one of the things I do at my school, I guess I like to wear a lot of hats. I'm in charge of like many things, and my friend and I run fifth grade student council. And so at the beginning of the year, I always go into the classrooms to talk about what student council is and, you know, like what they'll do and explain the process, whatever. And then and then the kids have to write speeches. And then I go back in again the day when we're going to vote, and the kids read their speeches and we vote and we do the whole thing. And one of the things that I guess I'm so passionate about is I guess I'm a softie. And if anyone doesn't want to read their speech, I say that I'll read it for them. And I think that I do that because I think when I was in elementary school, like I think I always kind of wanted to be like a student council type person. And I think I was always like a little bit more afraid. So I think the teachers probably think I'm like, too nice, but whatever. There's worse things to be. So anyways, so I always say, if you don't want to read your speech, I'll read it for you. And I mean, I hope that some of them read it. So in one of the classes, thankfully, there were maybe like 10 kids running in each class. We have really big fifth grade this year. So there was like a ton of kids running. And one class, most of them read their speeches, which was good. And, I had to read a couple. And then in the next class, like maybe there were 10 kids running and 9 of them did not want to read their speeches. So I was reading all these speeches, and like I find like personally, like when I'm reading, and I feel like not that I feel like in regular conversation I'm like actively like switching my words or anything, but I feel like when I'm reading, it's like, okay, like I'm stuck to this like script. Like I guess like I do better when I'm like, having this ad lib off the cuff situation. And especially when I'm reading a kid's words, that I want to make sure that I deliver them as intended. And sometimes it's hard to read, and just, it's a lot. So I was reading, multiple speeches, and there were a couple of kids who were laughing at me, and I was like pretty stuck. And well, like one of them is one of my, so a lot of the kids like aren't my students, but there were at least 5 kids in the class who were, and one of the kids who was laughing was one of my students. And I was like, this is ridiculous, And so I, so, oh, so I called him out on it, and I was like, I get, as I stutter, I get stuck on my words, and like, it's not funny, and you shouldn't be laughing. And I was like, and like, you know better. I was like, you've known me since you were in second grade, and you know this is how I talk, so this is not acceptable. And well, unfortunately, that my great stern talking to did not work because he continued. But the great the the funny part of my story is, so I made it through all the speeches. I was not too happy with that student, and I probably said something another time or two. And then after the kids were doing the voting, and I was talking to their homeroom teacher, and she was telling me that one particular student, he had like been in trouble for something else, had to go to the office, and like did not seem to care. And she was like, that was ridiculous. If it's okay with you, I'm going to tell Scott, that's our principal. Like, this is not okay. So I was like, of course, like, thank you, and like, I kind of appreciated that, like, she saw how ridiculous it was, and like, it wasn't just me. I mean, I knew it wasn't, but nice to see or hear. So then later in the day, I'm in the hallway and I see the student who's walking down to come find me. He's sobbing, and he has an apology letter for me, um, which I wish I had it handy right now, but it was like, I am so, 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 so sorry. I will never, ever, ever, ever laugh again. And I was like, well, you can laugh in life, but like, just try and not laugh, at people who are stuttering, or stuff like that. So anyways, I hope, I guess he wasn't upset the other day he went to the principal's office about saying whatever, like, other inappropriate things. So I guess being rude to Miss Onofri, like, set him over the edge. So I feel like I was proud of myself for saying something in the moment, and like, it felt good that, like, I'm glad that the teacher like felt like it was worth saying something, and I'll cherish the apology note. So I feel like Pam and I kind of got us on like an interesting topic of, have you had experiences where kids are like straight up making fun of you or laughing at you? And so does anyone else have an experience like that? And
I
bye, Cameron. It was good to see you.
I have, and I think it's really funny because it's like, for me personally, I think the students where I have the most trouble with, like usually early on, they typically end up being my favorite students, like towards the end of the school year, every year. And that's, I'm always curious as to why that is. Like I've had personal experiences where, yeah, this has happened to me, right? Where kids have made fun of me for whatever, right? But as the days go by and the months go by, and we just somehow we're just drawn closer, right? I don't necessarily know what that's about, but I do see some sort of correlation to the students picking on you early on, typically ending up being the ones you love the most when the semester's over.
Yeah, I think those kids, I think they want that attention, and to bring in the stuttering, it's like, it's a good way to say, teach them like, this is who we are, and it's okay. And then, like Avery said, at the end of the day or end of the school year, you end up being best friends. Like, they end up being one of your best students. Um, I worked in high school for a year, and I've had those students where they didn't laugh, but like, I could hear them talking under their breath, like, oh, she talks weird, or why she talk like that. And then, like, when we have the downtime, I would go over and talk to them and like, hey, I heard what you said, and I'm not upset. So this is what, like, I want to talk to you about. And then after that, they're cool, we're fine. And then we're just like, they want to help out with things throughout the school day, and they do end up just being cool kids afterwards.
I think I finally got it now, and I agree with you, Ari. I think this is what it is. I think it's their way of inviting you, or it's their way to invite you to invite them into your world. It's almost as if like the young boy that has a crush on a girl, but doesn't necessarily know how to relate that message, but will poke fun at her or will nag the hell out of her just to get attention, right? I think that's what it is, you know. So, and I'm not saying that that's the case for all the students that poke fun, but in my personal experience, I have witnessed that. I've witnessed that some kids they turn to, like, you know, humiliation and making fun of people in order to get some level of attention from that person.
In that same vocational high school that I worked at, of all people, they had me in charge of the National Technical Honor Society. I was like, why me? Why the only person in the building that stutters would you make the Technical Honor Society person? Because I had to induct them into the society and go through the whole pledge and the candle lighting ceremony, and then reading each kid's name, so like there was a line in the pledge where I would, so like the pledge went like, now repeat after me, and I would say a line of the pledge and then the kids would say the pledge after me. So I didn't know any other way to do it but to put some humor into it, because I wanted people to know that I stuttered, but didn't want it to be like the main issue. So when I was telling the kids, okay, so we're gonna deal with the pledge, so now repeat after me, and I said, but don't repeat the stutters, so it was a very light way of saying it, and I put it out there, and then I was able to relax, and the parents had like just a quick little chuckle. And once I got it out there, I felt okay, and I was able to get through that. And then also before the ceremony, I had spent an undue amount of time of phonetically working on the pronunciation of each kid's name, because I wanted to make sure that I said each kid's name correctly, because not just because I was worried about stuttering, but the parent wanted to hear their kid's name, as the kid crossed the stage to get their certificate. And we had like this like drape or something that they wore when they were inducted, so I had the names phonetically sounded out because I knew that it was important to the parent to hear their kid's name said correctly. And I spent weeks on that, but because I wanted to get it right. But the humor part, don't repeat the stutters, it worked, and the kids were like absolutely fine with that. They didn't bat an eyelash, and I was really happy that I was able to do that and plug a little humor in there. As the room goes silent.
You guys ever find it? Do you guys ever find it, like I do, that that, I mean, everybody hates to public speak, and you talk to them about it, and you kind of want to just like, I don't know, uh, punch them. Like, how could you hate to public speak? Imagine being us. You know what I mean? It's like, and I talked to an SLP one time because I used to do some work with the mental aspect, and she told me that the one thing that she hated more than anything was to get up and to give a speech and everything. And it's always kind of baffled me, like that should be us. You know what I mean? It's like we are the ones that struggle. If you know, if you can talk fine, why does it bother you so much? I don't know. I just wonder if anybody else has ever had that. Well, I don't want to give this, you know, I'm kind of going back to thinking like what Pam says, she gets picked to do this. Well, you know, but uh, I've had stuff like pawned off on me, like, well, I don't want to go and present. I don't want to do this. Well, I, but you speak fine. You know, I mean, and why don't you like doing it? Why am I asked to do this? But it's just something that's very, you know, like, f- frustrating because usually, and Pam, I don't know, in your case, well, when I've been asked to do stuff, well, they know that I have a stutter, so well, then why are you asking me? You know what I mean? I mean, you can't do this, and I kind of can relate to that, Pam, because I've gotten asked to like present at like awards nights and stuff because the person that speaks just fine, you know, they don't want to present the science award. You know, well, then why are you asking me? You know, so I don't know. I'm just curious if anybody else has ever had that as well.
Well, I've heard that most people dread public speaking more than death, so, like it's not just people who stutter that dread public speaking. I think even Jerry Seinfeld made like a big joke about that way back when, but that's what Toastmasters is all about. Like people join Toastmasters because they freaking hate to public speak. And I was amazed when I joined Toastmasters. I did way back in 2006 and completed the entire program much quicker than all the fluent people in the program. I saw it as a challenge and an opportunity, and the people in the group who were fluent just were petrified of standing up and even doing a practice speech in a very supportive group, like public speaking is a terror, but I still didn't want to be the one assigned to be up there at the award ceremony. Like they got the whole freaking school, the guidance counselor, the social worker. I mean, like, why me? Like I was like, I didn't even have like a counselor title or anything. I was the career development person trying to sign people up to come and take HVAC. Why do I need to be the one up there doing that? But whatever it was, so I made the best of it.
Yeah, I understand, Pam. I had my principal who's often made some, like jokes about my speech at times. Well, he recently got um hear, hearing aids because he doesn't hear very well. And he said to me, like a few weeks back, he said, "Well, Rob, you don't understand. It's so frustrating. I just can't hear sometimes." I looked at him and I said, "Well, um, imagine how frustrating it is when you want to say something and you can't." And he just stopped dead in his tracks, like. And I said, "Well, I I understand, but you're the one that makes me do all this public speaking all the time." So, yeah, I know I agree with you. So, yeah, sorry, I don't mean to babble. Sorry.
No, it's awesome. I'm glad you're sharing. I can definitely like relate to what you're saying. Like I feel like maybe like when I was in college, I think was the first time that I realized that like other people who don't stutter are also like freaked out by public speaking and like even like talking on the phone, like l- like like my college roommate hated to talk on the phone. And like, if you had a call to order food, like she hated to do that. So I feel like not that I did it all the time, but like I just remember kind of being wait a minute, like, why do you have a problem with this? I don't get it. And then it was like, oh, wait a minute, like other people also don't like this. And like, definitely there's been like some times where like I'm doing, whatever thing with like, a lot of like public speaking, and I'm like, oh, wow, like what, why am I the one doing this? And like even like in the beginning of this year, my principal, so there's we as we have two ESL teachers at my school, and we were talking about like we had a meeting with the principal and talking about our like ELL scores and like all this stuff. And so as my principal asked us if we'd do a presentation at our next like school-wide PD, just to kind of like explain, the scores. And we have these like EL student success plans that are kind of BS, but I didn't say that. But explain that and different like accommodations and interventions basically. And so of course, I mean, it wasn't like we could really say no. So of course we said yes. And then like the other teacher is like much more like reserved and shy. So it was never even like a question of like she was going to do it with me. Like I just knew like I was giving this presentation. Um I'm just like, of the two of us, like so much more like outgoing and whatever. So, but it was like in my head, I'm like, this is so funny. Like I'm the one doing this. And I definitely like when I gave the presentation, like I definitely like, stuttered more than I do like when I'm just talking to people in a conversation. But I feel like it went well. And like, I was like prepared. I had my slides and I felt like I really like, was able to communicate all the things that I needed to. And it does like feel ironic when it's like you're the one that's as you're the one who's doing it.
Yeah, I just want to comment on that thing too. We talk about college, and roommates and stuff like now I look at, we can all kind of relate to this as, you know, asking a girl out on a date. I mean, these wimps now can pick up their phone and they could text her or send her a chat where the rest of us, we had a call and usually we knew their brother or we knew somebody or we knew, I mean, where these guys now, but it's that, but yeah, I mean, it's just that, but also, no, I forget what I just, there's just so many times that we're just asked to, like you said, Sarah, why are we asked? I don't know, it's just kind of interesting. That's all.
Doing
Well, I guess.
television,
Oh,
I'm sorry.
no, go ahead. Sorry.
Being in TV, millions sometimes, or just one or two see us, but there's more to us than just how we speak. It is our personality. It is who we are that actually draws people in. And, we look at ourselves from the inside out, but others look at us as a whole, and they see more than just how we speak. They see all of us. And so I think that's the reason why they may ask you to speak, because they love who you are.
Yeah, that's definitely connected to what I was gonna say, but you said it so much better, Bill. But I was gonna say I feel like that definitely like sort of drives home the point that like, just because we stutter, it doesn't mean that we can't be effective communicators. And I think that like, a lot of times there are people who don't stutter and might be like perfectly fluent, but might be really boring public speakers and not engaging and not outgoing. And so you can stutter and be an amazing communicator. And like it's really about what what your message is, and like the delivery outside of the stuttering. I think that's really important. And I mean, and like Bill's so right, like we are getting asked, we're doing these things for a reason. It's because we're great.
Yes, I agree. You guys find that I'm just gonna open it. You guys find that if you have like a PowerPoint and you can kind of like point at this and you can go over it and it takes it off of you as a person. Do you guys find that that's easier for you and you become more fluent? Because I've kind of like if I have to do a presentation, say when school comes back to go over the rules and the guidelines, if I have a PowerPoint and it's on a screen, it kind of takes the attention off of me and they see it. And if I go over that, then I'm a lot more fluent. I just wonder if anybody else has that as well.
Well, I feel like if it's slides and I'm like kind of supposed to read like exactly, that would stress me out more because like I said, I don't like when there's like an exact script. But if it's just like some sort of things to kind of like guide the presentation, I feel like it's nice to have, some sort of like visuals. Feels like they're not just like it's not like they're just looking at you.
Yeah, I agree with you, Sarah. If I have the slides there, I could always just go back and just read what's on it, then ad lib off of it, and then just say what I want to say. And I think the slides, it helps that's a being a distraction. Um, it gives me an idea on what I'm going to say, so it helps me be somewhat more fluent. But if I don't have the slides and I'm just thinking off the top of my head, that's when I I stutter more. But if I have the slides, it's like a distraction, and then it helps me think about what I'm going to say at that moment.
I've always been of the philosophy about slide decks and stuff that, like, if you're just going to read the PowerPoint, you could have just emailed it to me, like I've always been like of that philosophy. Like, I find it boring when somebody reads verbatim from a PowerPoint slide. So, when I was doing the presentations about the vocational programs that we offered, each slide would be something different, and it would just be like clues for me to remember to talk about the requirements to get into HVAC. They had to have 2 sequences of math and they needed to have a science class, and to get into the CNA class, they needed to have blah, blah. So it wasn't like I was, you know, verbatim going over each slide. I mean, the slides were visual cues to me to remember that each class had different requirements. But like I've been to some conferences and statewide different conferences where people have so much jammed on one slide, like the entire slide is covered with words, and then somebody's trying to read it all. And the first thing that I think of is, if that's all you're going to do is just read the slide, you could have just emailed it. Like, why bother to be here? I just find that incredibly boring. So, I guess to each its own, but I don't like that. Like, I would rather have somebody just using it just as a cue, rather than, you know, reading it verbatim. Because, like, I'll be honest, at a big convention hall, when somebody's doing that, I have nodded off. If somebody is not grabbing my attention, like I remember, like, first day of school orientation, 1,000 people crammed into this big room and they're showing these presentations, and this, somebody's reading verbatim, like, really, and it's so boring. Like, and I'll look, and it looks like several people are nodding off, and then nothing's changing. The person's monotone voice, I have sometimes closed my eyes during big things like that, and I am not proud of that, but it's happened when people read to me what I can read myself. Has anybody else experienced that?
For sure. In staff meetings, just we have those long district presentations that we have to sit through, and our principal will read from the slides verbatim, and I'm just like, we could have just kept this sent out in an email while we're in our classrooms setting up our lessons. Like I've been through this multiple times.
Oh, sorry, I felt like maybe it was someone coming off mute to say something. I know a while back we kind of started talking about like interactions with parents, and that was another topic that we wanted to bring up, thinking about interactions with parents and also with coworkers and just sort of like how you manage that. And like Rob, I know you were sharing earlier about, like those conversations with parents and sort of how you address it. And I just wanted to say, well, first of all, like I feel like it's very like brave of you to be able to address it with them, like even though it's not easy. And I think you're doing really awesome stuff. But I also wanted to say that like you don't have to say sorry to them, like you are like this is just part of who you are, and like you shouldn't have to apologize for it. And I feel like, you are amazing, and clearly you're doing really good work and doing things that, trying to make these kids' lives better. So yeah, I just wanted to say that. And also wanted to see if other people had interactions or stories about parents.
Or if you
Well,
had any questions about how to deal with considering and parents. Rob, did you have a comment?
no, I was just gonna say, with my role being in administration, um, you know, and especially being the disciplinarian, I I probably I deal. I mean, most of my day is with parents because their kids do something that they shouldn't do, and then and it's just like I said, sometimes it's just I'm just floored by the response of these parents, and it's like, wow, but you learn to just I've learned to just they don't know what and then once that they do find out, because we all know that we have good days and bad days, and some days it's really good and some days it's not good. I mean that's um fluency. But but it's really, but when you call a parent up to discipline their child and you're blocking on words, well, they just think that you're afraid, and then I was told one time, can I have the real principal who can talk right, and it's just, okay. And I had, a little side note story too. I had a SLP one time and an IEP, to kind of laugh at how I talked. And I was kind of like pulled away by that. I'm like, okay, yeah, but it's just people don't understand, and once they do, it's just then you just say, okay, it is what it is.
Can I say something? Hello?
Of course.
Yeah, sorry. My name is Lou. I live near Philly. I'm 75 years old. I used to lead the Philadelphia chapter of the NSA in the early in the 2000s. I don't teach, but I wanted to attend this because I would have wanted to have taught. My father was a college prof. I started to stutter when I was 15. I was a senior in high school. I was skipped 2 grades. I think I was on the gifted spectrum and the highly sensitive spectrum, which are now considered part of the neurodivergent umbrella. I'm just coming to realize that now. And I'm gay, and getting choked up. I started to stutter when I was a senior in high school. So I was one of your students, and I was 15 years old, and I had a hard time. I was trying to read out loud, and I think I had building tension because I was trying to hide the fact that I was gay, that I was skipped ahead 2 grades. I felt I was the son of a college professor. I had a lot of pressure to excel, to, be this academic achiever, to perform. And I couldn't handle all the stress. I felt isolated socially because I put up barriers and shields because I didn't want anyone to know that I was gay, I was a homosexual. I could be kicked out of my home, kicked out of school. And I had a lot of religious trauma. Was raised in a strict Roman Catholic home. And I couldn't take the pressure. So when I began to stutter, I associated that with my being gay. And I figured that people thought that I was stuttering because they knew that I was a homosexual. So there was this tremendous amount of shame. And it shut me down as an individual. So I went through high school and college. I had to go to college here. My father taught at what is now Widener University in Chester, outside of Philadelphia. It was then Pennsylvania Military College, and I had to go there because the tuition was paid for. It was during the Vietnam War, so you had to go to school to get your tuition deferment, or you're going to go to Vietnam. I felt trapped, and I just felt totally shut down and isolated. And the point I'm trying to come to here was, I have a good mind. I speak well. Many people have told me that I would have been a good teacher, and I regret the fact that I did. There was so much shame. This is back in the 1960s. And I felt I had no voice. Felt so terribly put down. My father controlled a lot of my life. He put me in the engineering design business, which is sort of like doing glorified drafting. And now at age 75, as a cancer survivor, I'm now in a position where I didn't follow my heart's passion. I was sort of warehoused in 40 years of doing work in what was basically glorified drafting with no off ramp. And now I don't have enough money to retire. And I'm in therapy. I'm trying to work with complex trauma. I'm doing internal family system, dealing with blending my egg cell parts from my protector parts and all this. And I just wanted to listen to where you folks are today as teachers. That I want to applaud you for the courage you have, for your ability to take risks. And I want to know that if you stutter, because this was a bar to me. I felt there's no way in the world that I could ever teach because, I couldn't say my name, or I was going to stumble on words. I want to know if you are evaluated fairly, like when you're going through, you're taking your education classes, or you're being hired to work for a school district or for Gilliam school, and people are evaluating you, whether it's the parents, the students, or say your supervisors. Do you feel in today's world that you're supported in teaching? And I say this from the context, when I led the Philadelphia chapter, I had members who became SLPs and they taught, but they were teaching in schools that had they had a speech language pathology department, and they were teaching fluency classes. A lot of them did that. But if you're just going to become a teacher, say, and teach science or mathematics or whatever, I just want to know how it feels today in 2025, how it feels to teach, and how supported you feel, and and I'm gathering from what you're saying here that there's a much more heightened awareness of differences. And I really was inspired to hear a lot of you talking about accepting ourselves for who we are as unique human beings. I'm getting very emotional. I'm sorry. You're telling me, you can tell this is coming from the heart, because I dealt with a lot of trauma, a lot of shame, and a lot of being put down. I finally now have a voice, when I led the Philadelphia chapter of the National Stuttering Association, it helped me to develop a voice attending NSA conferences. And I now lead a support and social group for gay and bisexual men here in Delaware County outside of Philadelphia called the Delco Dudes. And I've led it for 13 years. And it's given me a chance to fully express myself. I tell everybody that I stutter. So you may have heard in the NSA, there's a group called Passing Twice for people who stutter and who are gay or LGBTQ. And dealing with both of those issues can be sometimes overwhelming. But I just wanted to share with you that I'm really glad to have attended this session, to listen to all of you. I'm inspired by you. And I hope in some way with what I'm just saying to you, even though I'm choking up and breaking up here, that my observations and my comments to you of praise and support and admiration are help to you, because I admire what you're doing. And I don't know if you have any comments for someone like me who, the water's over the dam. I can't go back and start teaching. But I wanted to know what it would be like to teach. And so I'm listening to you. I'm heartened to hear that you're able to follow your heart's passion, because something in you wanted to teach. You wanted to impart your ideas, your feelings to the next generations of people. And I think that's a wonderful career. I'm going to thank you, all of you. Thanks. So,
Lou, thank you for sharing all of that. And definitely, like, you don't have to apologize for, sharing your feelings. I feel like we are really lucky that you were comfortable to be vulnerable and share with us. And I think I probably speak for everybody that we're so happy you're here and you're so happy that you shared. And it sounds like e- even though you didn't become a teacher, you've definitely done a lot to help and mentor others through leading your chapter, through the Delco Dudes. Like that's really incredible. And I'm glad that we can kind of share a little bit of like a bright light with you here tonight too. And I know like you asked about, like being evaluated fairly. And it's funny, like that's not even something that like in my 12 years at my school that like I've ever had to question, like would that be a part of when they evaluate me, and I feel like 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 when I'm at school, like my coworkers, my principal, the assistant principal, my students, they know I stutter, and it's just part of who I am. And like when they come in for when like my principal comes in for an observation, like I'm not thinking about stuttering. I'm thinking about, oh, did I write the objective on the board? And, like what, like what's the student going to say, and like it doesn't even like cross my mind. So, and I mean, hopefully others have a similar experience, but I just wanted to say that, and just that we're really happy you're here, and I'm really glad you decided to share with us.
I'm glad to hear you say that this isn't an issue. In other words, when you're being evaluated or in whatever manner, that you're looked at who you are as a person, how you communicate and express yourself, and your fluency is not somehow a metric which is weighed against you in some way. So that's good to hear. That's good to hear.
Good.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. When our admin comes in to observe, they look for are our students engaged in the lesson? Are they focused? Are they learning? They could care less about if I stutter or not. They're not there to judge me on my speaking abilities. They're there to see if I'm teaching the curriculum correctly, and if the students are engaged and working and participating. So yeah, I've never had an issue where I've ever been evaluated on by speech whatsoever.
I've never really had any issues with being observed and having principals with that issue. But in my undergrad, and this is 25 years ago, I was taking a class. It was teaching in a global society, which you think would be about understanding and things of that sort. Well, the professor, she was an old school nun, um, and I guess I'm going to probably phrase this wrong, wrote me up, if that's lack of a term, to, I guess I was on probation because of my speech. And when I found that out, when she brought that up, I was actually doing speech therapy on campus, um, for the speech path program I used to call myself a lab rat. And I was telling her all about this stuff, and they were recording this session, and the director of the SLP department, she went to higher ups, and pretty much she was put in her place. And I was off probation the very next day. So I guess the big thing is I think as now society is a bit more understanding. I think this was back in 2000 when this happened. So I think in the past, 20 years or so, I think acceptance and understanding has increased. But that's kind of my one of my hot spots that I kind of keep buried deep inside still. With people not understanding. And you think of teaching that class of a global understanding, being a nun, that there would have been a bit more understandingness there, but there wasn't. And she had to be shown the right way. So
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah.
Yep. If I could just say, Lou, that was very uh moving. Okay. I appreciate you sharing that with us. I know it's hard, but if I could just comment, I've been marked down on my evaluations before as poor communication. And I asked why, and I said, I send emails, I have remind accounts, I have everything else. I have, and I was told that, well, your speech isn't exactly clear all the time. And I said, well, I understand that. And this was probably 12 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And looking back, I probably could have sued his ass, but I just, I mean, I'm just being upfront with it. But yeah, I was marked down because my communication was poor, and I was like, well, to communicate with staff, I do all this stuff, but then I was told, well, yeah, but your speech at time, and that was actually explained to me during the e- evaluation process. So it's happened, but I also had him to clear it up, and then when he figured, and I just said, well, thanks a lot, but I think I do quite well with emails and everything else. People know what's going on, so yeah, I have seen it, somewhat.
Again, thank you for sharing that. And I figured there must be some of that going on, and that sounds like a real honest uh, 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 take on things in terms of there probably is some critique of some of you along the way, because I know I faced a lot of it myself as someone who stuttered, even though I was doing drafting work and I was sort of in a place where I didn't have to communicate in a verbally intensive way, but I would tell, or there would be people who would tell me, gee, Lou, it's a shame that you stutter. You could have been in sales, or you could have done something else. So, I mean, and some people thought that I was stupid. I mean, I actually was told that. People just said, well, Lou, we used to think because you stuttered that you were stupid. So, but again, this may be a different generation. It could be earlier years. And I realize now we're in 2025, and this is why I attended this session, to see if things have changed, and if the climate has changed, and the weather is a little fairer here in terms of how people assess each other. But thank you for sharing the fact that you are still receiving some kind of critique in that manner. But I think, as you said, the important thing is that you communicate, whether it's through written speech or overall, that you're communicating effectively in terms of your job in every way. And I think that's that's the main takeaway that you have to look at, and hopefully you're being evaluated on that basis. And again, just keep plugging away. And I'm very inspired by you and all Rob, and all of you. You know, I'm so glad that I was able to attend this, because this has done me a lot of good.
Well, thank you. And one thing too, and I just want to say that, you know, one thing that's always kind of gotten me again from being on the administrative role is we you know, we help the people who have g- difficulty with hearing. We help the people who have difficulty with seeing. We help the people that have learning disabilities. And but how much help, aside from going to an SLP, where, and I was that kid, the SLP shows up at your door, go, but what about the speech difficulties? What are we doing for them? What accommodations are we doing for them in schools? And I don't see a lot of that being done, other than they go and they read a sentence for an SLP. Well, we all know that the barrier comes down and we read the sentence. And I've always said it. So we're going to help the vision, and we're going to help the hearing, we're going to help the learning disabled, we're going to help the emotionally impaired, but the person that can't speak, where's the accommodations there? No, we're going to put this kid in front of the classroom when he or she is sweating like crazy and they can't get the words out. And it's just always been a passion of mine. Where is that accommodation? And you know, some schools might have it, but I've never really seen that. Yet, you know, we do the text to speech, we do all that other stuff that we do, but we don't help the poor young child, you know, or just whatever, with a speech impairment. And yeah, that's kind of been a little bit of my soapbox, as you can tell. I don't understand that, but so yeah, but that's kind of where I'm at. But Lou, I was called dumb as well. One thing that helped me was I was a good athlete, and I had four uh, older brothers. So I mean, that kind of stuck up for me. But yeah, I've been in your shoes, brother. I get it. It's we've all been there. I mean, it's just tough, and we just have to look past it.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear. I know we're getting close. I don't know if we're getting close to our closing time here, but when I had trouble reading out loud, which is sort of as the thing came, as the stuttering made itself manifest in 1965, nobody. I was trying to read in a world cultures class, so this social studies in the 12th grade, and people, they could see that I had previously read fluently and everything, but there had been like an emotional just overwhelm at some point. And I just couldn't get the words out, and nobody came to my assistance. You're talking about now, again, even was this now 60 years later, and it's still the same thing where no one's coming to your aid and, you know, how can I help you, or I don't know what you would say, because you don't want them to, you don't want them to finish your sentences. You don't want them to tell you to slow down and, you know, just, you know, breathe, because that's not what it's about. But there should be some kind of intervention that is useful and helpful. And like I said, I'm sorry to hear that even today that isn't really happening for someone who's having a problem, you know, speaking with a stutter, that they're still, like you say, up there sweating away and trying to get the words out, and yet you know, there isn't any help. So but I hope that that's slowly changing, though, overall, and I hope the NSA and other agencies are helpful in raising awareness, and that people are getting involved with chapters both for adults and for families and kids, and that this is being helpful, and then that speech language pathologists are much more aware, much more effective. I know in my years with the Philadelphia chapter, we talked about I don't mean to ramble on, but back in the old days, we used to hate SLPs because we felt that they didn't understand who we were, and the SLPs were the enemy. And then we saw the evolution that through time, it was we as people who stutter who started becoming SLPs. And so the tables were turned. But I hope that overall there's an evolution of awareness and understanding as there seems to be on a lot of fronts, that we accept people for who we are. We accept our authentic selves, and that is what counts in the long run. And you know, anyhow, I'll be quiet now, and you can wrap things up if we're near time here.
Yes,
Thank you.
sadly, I do. Thank you so much, Lou, and thank you, Rob, and just thank you to everybody who shared. We do have to wrap it up, but I did just want to say that, you know, kind of with what like Rob, you just brought up, and Lou, what you were saying, I think that one of the things that's so like unique and can be challenging about stuttering is that just because there's, I don't want to say so few of us, but it's because 1% of people stutter. I feel like there's just not enough education and you know, awareness. And so I think that I know like Teresa put in the chat about like different IEP accommodations that, you know, students can get for stuttering. I think that there are definitely like possible accommodations, possible ways to help people, but it's like, I feel like, you know, people who stutter and their families need to be able to know how to ask for them. And I think that, you know, the world as a whole needs to gain more awareness about stuttering. And so this is National Stuttering Awareness Week. And so we're really glad that you spent part of it with us. And you know, think about what you can do in your own lives to, you know, help to make the world a little bit of a better place for people who stutter. So, all right. Well, so thank you everybody for being here. This was really nice. Thanks everybody who shared. And even if you didn't share, just being a part of this group, this was really special. And we're so glad that you all got to be here tonight.